Is college education worth it any longer? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. The 2025 College Hopes and Worries Survey Report put out by the Princeton Review. The results are in a survey of 9,317 college applicants and parents about their dream schools and their biggest college admission and financial aid challenges and worries. Guess what? Cost and taking on debt, right? So when you consider, is college worth it nowadays, that has to be weighed against the cost, that has to be weighed against the debt. And it used to be that it seemed like most people thought the debt that you took on to attend college was worthwhile because there was a certain cause effect. You go to college, you get a degree, you automatically get a bump in the workforce in terms of salary and position and prestige and opportunities. Nowadays, is that true? Is that true really? Because we have so many left-leaning colleges out there that aren't teaching students actual practical skills that translate into the workforce, but even more than that, are teaching students more social justice type of agendas and Marxist agendas and activist agendas. It's almost like they're training college graduates to become activists in the vein of Barack Obama instead of productive members of society that actually offer something of value to the community, to society as a whole. So, is college worth it? Is the cost of college worth it? Is the time it takes to apply and the worries and the stress and all the stuff that goes along with applying for college, is it worth it for parents and students? That's an individual family choice. But there's some interesting data out there that shows that the mindset is shifting on college, and it's not always in the direction of, yes, let's go to college. Before I get into more of that, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, where you may subscribe to my Bold and Blunt newsletter. Just go to the bottom of the WashingtonTimes.com page, main page, click on newsletter section and find Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley. You'll get my emailed right to your email box. You'll get my commentaries that I write at the Washington Times, as well as my Tuesday and Thursday Bold and Blunt podcasts, as well as whatever video versions of Bold and Blunt that I put out. Yes, you don't want to miss those, right? You don't want to miss any of the episodes, any of the commentaries, because it gives you the tools you need to fight these leftist lunatics that are out there, right? Leftists. You see a lot of them on college campuses, as a matter of fact. You see a lot of them in the public K through 12 school system nowadays, as a matter of fact. So you need the information to fight off this far leftist assault that's still ongoing in America. And really, in my opinion, nothing gives you those tools better than a good old-fashioned subscription to Bold and Blunt, the newsletter. Anyhow, but you can also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. All right, let's look at this Princeton Review 2025 College Hopes and Worries Survey Findings. 9,317 college applicants and their parents. The number one dream college among students, MIT. The number one dream college among parents, Princeton. 73% report high stress about applications. Okay, that's a no-brainer. 98% need financial aid. 98% need financial aid to go to college. Jeez, imagine that. 92% plan to take the SAT, the ACT, or both. And 99% consider college worth it. So when you say worth it, what does that mean? Because if I go back to being 17, 18 years old, college being worth it to me, in my mind, meant I got to play another 4 years of field hockey, right? So college was worth it. Not that that would translate into anything meaningful after college, but in my mind, that made college worth it. Or perhaps it made college worth it that I could live away from home, that I didn't have to live with my parents any longer. That made college worth it, right? But is that really the sort of worth it that is actually worthwhile in terms of translating into something productive after college? So worth it is sort of a generic term, sort of meaningless, right? And sort of doesn't take into consideration the fact that going into debt for college for the next 10, 20, even longer number of years may not actually be worth it if your post-college, postgraduate, post-high degree job is to go work at a fast food restaurant, because that degree you got at college that you so thought was worth it didn't really translate into anything that paid the bills after college. And there's an interesting there's an interesting trend that is also occurring at the same time this Princeton survey came out. There are quite a few parents in America, along with prospective college students in America, who think that, college maybe isn't the right choice. Maybe it's not the way to go. Maybe, I don't know what I want to do when I'm in college. I don't know what I want to do when I get out of college. So maybe it's not worth taking on $40,000 in debt each year and graduating with $160,000 in debt and really no interest in doing anything that I went to college for, right? So there have been some surveys. One I came across, it's from April 2021, but the divide has grown greater since then. Nearly half of U.S. parents want more non-college paths. They want options for their kids that doesn't necessarily lead to 4 years of traditional college, right? And which, by the way, in many instances nowadays, it's not a 4-year college education, right? It's turned into 5 and 6. Back when I was in college, it was very, very rare to hear of somebody who spent 5 years getting a 4-year degree, right? It was usually because they were a total mess up. They spent their freshman year just basically partying, and they would have been booted from school, except, their parents were cash-paying parents, and so the school happily accepted them to continue their education there. But with the admonition, your kid can't stay here if he doesn't bring up his D- average, right? So in those instances, a 4-year degree would turn into 5 years at school, right? And maybe the kid would take classes during the summer to shorten that, to make it 4.5. But nowadays, and I know this because I have 4 kids, and just paying attention to what goes on college campuses, especially during the COVID years, right? It just seems like I don't want to say it's becoming standard, but it's becoming a lot more acceptable for a 4-year degree to take 5 years, 6 years, whatever. That probably goes hand in hand with the shift in culture where kids aren't really raised by parents to become adult functioning members of society. Too many parents nowadays, it seems like, coddle their kids, let them live at home in their late 20s, 30s. They're not pushed to go out and be independent. So it probably plays into that cultural mindset shift as well. But taking 5 years, 6 years for something that should take 4, or in many instances, maybe even less, it's a colossal waste of money and a colossal waste of time. So it is really no surprise that some some families in America are looking at the field. They're surveying the field of college options and looking at the debt and looking at the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, especially the Ivy Leagues where the best and the brightest are supposed to go. And they're saying, I don't know if I want my kid in that situation. And they're thinking, do we really need this? Do we really need $150,000 in debt just to come home after 4 years or 5 years or 6 and not have any real direction or focus on where to go in life? And so according to Gallup, which took a look at a Family Voices study, which was a survey of U.S. parents conducted by Carnegie Corporation and Gallup, 54% of parents of children age 11 to 25 in the United States would prefer that their child enroll in a 4-year university immediately after high school. However, 46% of parents say even if there were no barriers to their child earning a bachelor's degree, they would prefer another post-secondary option. Isn't that interesting, right? So even if they had the money to go to college and money weren't the factor and financial aid wasn't necessary, 46% say that still maybe something better is out there than a 4-year college degree. And I agree, right? I agree. Nearly half of current students' parents want more options, Gallup wrote. Among parents whose children are enrolled in middle or high school, 84% say they are satisfied with 4-year college, 2-year college, and vocational or technical skills training programs as options for their child. However, in a separate question, nearly half of these parents, or 45%, either agreed or strongly agreed that they wished that there were more options available for their child. Well, guess what? You know what? You can make options, right? You don't need the government to provide options for your child. Say you want your child just to go into business. And maybe your child has a more entrepreneurial spirit and less scholarly focus or less scholarly interest. Then there's nothing that holds that up, right? You can do that. You don't need the government to provide those options for you. But I think the trend is interesting that many parents in America who perhaps in their own formative years, when they were growing up and they had parents who were pushing them to go to college, who have perhaps changed their minds and seen that today's colleges aren't exactly offering the same experiences and level of education, quality of education that used to be the norm 20, 30 years ago. Let me just read really quickly from the Princeton Review, the top 10 dream schools for students versus parents, because I think it's kind of interesting. The top 10 for students first. Number 1, MIT. Number 2, Harvard. Number 3, Stanford. Number 4, Princeton. Number 5, Yale. Number 6, Columbia. Number 7, New York University. Number 8, University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. Number 9, University of Pennsylvania. And number 10, University of California at Los Angeles. Many of those schools provide great educations, particularly for the anti-Semites in your family who might like to learn how to gather and protest more forcefully, the many voices over one. So now skipping over to the top parents' picks for their children, their dream schools for their children. Number 1, Princeton. Number 2, MIT. Number 3, Stanford. Number 4, Harvard. Number 5, Yale. Number 6, University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. Number 7, Columbia. Number 8, Duke. Number 9, New York University. And number 10, University of Texas at Austin. Again, Again, same with the students. Some of the top picks for anti Semites to attend, but there are options out there. If you don't want to take on a ton of debt and have your child come home after 4, 5, 6 years of school with that debt and come and live free in your basement for the next 10, 20, 30 years, perhaps, or perhaps just, in perpetuity, waiting for the day that you die and your child can inherit your home so he or she will never have to go out and work independently and learn to pay bills and so forth on his or her own. So if you're not looking for a school like that, or you're not looking for a school where your child can hone his anti-Semitic protest skills, or can learn how to be the next social justice warrior and go work for a Barack Obama foundation, and learn to hate you and all Western and American values, then there are options out there. There are many, many other options. And for my money, if I were sending my kids to school, my kids to college nowadays, my top picks would be to look at the Christian colleges out there, of which are many in America. And thankfully, I have a great guest today, the president of Colorado Christian University, Eric Hogue, to talk about the state of education in America and what Colorado Christian University is doing to train the next generation in the proper pro-American way to go. Eric, I want to thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. It is so great to have you here.
Hey, it's great to speak with you, and always good to talk about the most pressing issues of the day with a little boldness.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Which we certainly do need boldness, what's going on in college campuses around the nation. You, as president of Colorado Christian University, though, have taken a determined step to make sure that there are no anti-Semitic protests on your campus. As a matter of fact, you guys have gone in the opposite direction. I understand you raised $1 million for the victims of the October 7th terror attacks in Israel. Tell me a little bit about that, please.
Well, at Colorado Christian University, a little different perspective on education. And when you're talking about a Christian university, there is a bond between Israel and America historically, constitutionally, allies, the development of Western civilization, and primarily when you're talking about the Bible, the book, we're both people of the book, and so there's a Judeo-Christian relationship. So that is a part of our DNA. Doesn't exclude other viewpoints, but on October 7th, the same way that we would have responded on September 11th in 2001 against terrorism, we did the same on campus. It was not an issue of geopolitics. It wasn't an issue of Palestinians versus Jews or Gaza. It was terrorism. And so we took a stance against evil and terrorism and came together with our Jewish community on campus, offered a meal for synagogues and attendees to come on campus, hear from our students, and be supported by Colorado Christian University. So I'm surprised that it's such a story. You would think that would be widespread across the country, but then again, it's a different world we live in.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. A few years ago, a couple decades ago for sure, this wouldn't have been a story like you said. It would have been repeated in campuses across the nation, and not even necessarily Christian college campuses. So what's going on? What's taking place? Is it the failure of the college age students now to be properly educated in the lower levels of education about civics and truthful Middle Eastern policy? Or is it just a biblical sort of revelation type time that we're facing now?
Well, I mean, I probably could touch on all of those areas, but I think it starts with education. I mean, higher education has changed. The humanities have changed. Core curriculum has changed. I think at many universities, and we're watching the story right now with Columbia, it's become ideology. I mean, if you would look at Columbia's core curriculum and their humanities, it has it has turned toward against America rather than educating upon the foundation of America. So CRT, DEI, all the acronyms have been inundated in education from K to 12, and then it just continues at a higher level of higher education. So I think number one, it's education. And then when you don't have a truthful perspective or a basis of research toward discovering truth, if you go to a university that says, well, there is, truth is what you perceive it to be, well, then what are we studying? I mean, we're just studying opinions at that point and perspectives. So education needs to be founded upon the research, the solid research of truth, of the history, whether good or bad, talk about the history, but not played into an agenda or an ideology or groupthink or anti-Americanism or becoming an anti-Semite. And that has, in many ways, been the end game for higher ed in America for the past 20 to 30 years.
Are you surprised at the pushback the Donald Trump administration is receiving in their efforts to deport or root out or punish anti-Semitism on college campuses?
Well, Muhammad Khalil would have been expelled immediately at CCU, and he would have been expelled ahead of any protest because we don't permit that type of behavior or action or speech at CCU. So it would not have gone to the point of protest and then walkout and encampment as it did at Columbia. At CCU would have been, well, you're not in class, you're receiving an F for a day, you're not in class for 2 days, but you're going to flunk this course, and pretty soon you're going to be academically on probation. Because you're there to study. You're not there to make a platform for yourself. You're there to be an apprentice of academics and liberal arts to gain an education so that when you graduate, then you can be a leader of this culture. So I am surprised that there's pushback because this is an egregious example of how wrong-headed the Ivies have become, as wealthy as they are, as they sit on their endowments, as they sit on their lores, and I think stroke each other's egos in academia. Here's an example of if you polled America, 80% of the people would immediately say, Muhammad Khalil is not there to do what he did. He's there to get an education, especially if he's in America. And he's visiting America, he should be appreciative of America and the opportunity of the education. That should not be the appropriate behavior. But then again, we have an element in America today, Cheryl, where truths are lied about and lies are truthed about, and we applaud that, and it's sickening.
And distressing. And it's curious, too, you mentioned the Ivy Leagues, because a lot of those Ivy Leagues were actually started to advance the gospel of Christ or to teach the students to evangelize. And they've come so far from that core mission.
Yeah. I believe it's Harvard's motto that says Veritas, truth, right? Still in their academic seal. This is happening all across the country. Now, there's some, I'll accept the fact that there's some erosion, too, in Christ-centered higher education in Christian universities. I mean, we're seeing it in some of our own ranks. It's disheartening. I think it's waning upon many parents and many students, adults 18 to 23, even considering higher education because they don't want to be in a cesspool of agenda. They just want education. They just want to be trained. They what they need and what they want is a course in the liberal arts that's founded upon a determined major that produces the expertise and the professionalism in the career that what they want to pursue.
Right.
But, freshman and sophomore years are nothing but ideology and agenda. And we're seeing it in our own ranks as well. So, something has to be done. I would agree that the Department of Education at a federal level is a bad idea. The pace of change is concerning, but it's been a narrative for a long time. The proof of the pudding is what will come out on the other side in the end. and will America change, and will higher education get back to what it needs to be done?
Yeah, you touch on an interesting point. The change in the places of higher learning in America. It used to be basic liberal arts education would teach you all you needed to know, basically, to go into almost any career field. And more importantly, it would challenge your thinking. It would hone your critical thinking skills. And I noticed, based on my own 4 kids looking at colleges, that the first year or two was basically mandated classes in social justice types of programs. And at the same time, you see the trend of students taking 5 and 6 years to graduate now. So that it's become an entirely different world. What is it like at Colorado Christian? Is it more in line with what it used to be in America as standard college education, but with a Christian theme?
Yeah, I would endorse the fact that we teach the humanities from a historical perspective upon a foundation of the liberal arts. It's not an indoctrination of what we want you to think. It is an education on what you need to know. There's a difference there. I mean, I can tell people, here's what I think and how you think and what you need to think, but that's not education. That may be persuasion or argumentation, and there's an element of that that's allowed in free speech. But what really has to happen is a benchmark education in the humanities, laced in the liberal arts. How do you think? How do you speak? How do you write? How do you act? What do you need to know at a basis level of higher education, so that then you can build upon that? And if it's nursing, or if it's education, or engineering, or science, or theology, or business, you have an education built upon what you need to know to be successful in the professions you choose. It's not what we're seeing across the country. And I guarantee you that is what Colorado Christian University is offering, that and the addition of a Christ-centered higher education for those that are concerned about not only the temporal, but the eternal.
So it's not just anti-Semitism that has become problematic on America's college campuses, but there also is a battle being waged against this White House administration to put a stop to the transgender agenda, specifically boys in girls sports. Do you see among the Christian community, though, some growing tolerance for transgenderism that seems a little bit at odds with biblical truths?
Most definitely. That would not, the position of accepting such is not biblical, and that would be a core exegesis at Colorado Christian University. Number 2, it is not safe. It's not safe. I want to welcome in Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, and his recent statement that he agrees it's not safe. We're happy to hear that. So some common sense on the other side of the aisle, and albeit from Sacramento, California, the belly of the beast. So we're happy to hear that. And then third, it's just not common sense. I mean, what has happened to just common sense? To be able to look at a scenario and go, male and female, oh, wait a second. So the male can't play basketball on a men's team, so he can claim trans and be an all-star performer on a women's team. That's not common sense. And where would you find common sense at higher ed? Well, in the humanities, in the core curriculum, in the liberal arts versus the agenda.
Do you think the news that we read daily now about what's taking place in America's school systems, both K through 12 and the higher levels, do you think that they're being hyped by the media? And they're really not that bad, that most schools are quietly just going about their business of educating students in traditional values and traditional type education? Or do you think this is sort of being hyped by the media? That, like, where do you stand on that?
I think there's pockets. I think blue state, red state makes sense. There are some blue states where you have K through 12 schools doing a really, really good job. And all they do is they shut up and keep their head down. Right? They just don't want to be noticed. And the less publicity on their success, I might say, the better, versus drawing attention and some type of legislation coming out of that blue state's capital. So there's a lot of stories that aren't told about success, and I think the majority of K through 12 schools are doing well. We just don't know about it because it's hush hush, stay quiet, because we're in a blue state. On the other side, I think there's, I'm in Colorado, so the K through 12 here has migrated toward charter schools. There's a lack of trust for public schools because a lot of people believe that public schools, number one, aren't safe, they're not focused, the academics are off kilter and full of agenda. And then in Colorado, the classical education is on the uptick because a lot of parents are concerned about students not reading anymore, having homework with reading assignments and doing a book report. That is not outdated. That is important. So to your question, it probably has more to do with geography in some cases. And why geography? Because if you feel comfortable enough to stand up and speak out, you're probably in a red state. If not, you're in a blue state. This is if you're a school doing well. On the other side, Title I's, the reason that we offer graduates from universities to go to Title I schools and have their student loan debt paid for is because nobody wants to go there. Because it's not safe, it's not protected.
So just wrapping up with this last question, there's no quick fix to turn around the education system in America, and it involves more than just hiring better teachers, right? We're getting into the culture and family unit and belief in God. But if you could pick maybe a couple of the top important things that need to happen in America to bring us back as a leader in world education, what would you say?
Well, the sciences are vitally important. So we need to continue to focus on math. We need to focus on reading and comprehension. We've lost that. I mean, if you look at some of the graduates of high schools across the country, there is a steep decline as it relates to American students competing in math, competing in reading or knowing the good old books that need to be read, and the ability to offer a prose or a paper after reading comprehension. And then third, I just think critical thinking, the ability to develop critical thinking. It's a muscle. And if everybody's told what they need to think, they're not working their muscles. So you need to be, even as an adolescent, in solid families, there needs to be, here's right, here's wrong. You're going to make a choice, and you're going to live with your choice. But at a remedial basis, you're going to have a consequence for that choice. I mean, we tell people what they should think, what they should and shouldn't do, and then if they make a mistake, per se, we take away the consequence. All of that has evaporated in America's society and in American education. We're afraid to give students what they have earned or not earned on a test. Some students need to know what it means to fail so they can benchmark their failure and build upon it and find success. I'll end with the story. I had an English teacher when I was a junior in high school. I turned in an assignment. Her name's Polly Haddon. She gave me a C-. I said, Miss Haddon, you gave me a C-. And she goes, no, I didn't give it to you. That's what you earned, Eric. You can do better than that. I'm not going to accept another C- paper from you. You're an A and B student. So until you put effort into it, you're going to get a C- or worse from me, because I'm going to tell you the truth. To this day, I have a relationship with that teacher because she's a hero in my life, as are teachers in hundreds of thousands of students' lives. When the teacher simply called out a failure point and they marked it, and the students build upon it. So we need more of that in America's education as well.
Yeah, and that's really not a criticism, right? That's a compliment. That's the teacher saying
100%.
You're better than this. And I think that goes so missed nowadays. So It was such a delight speaking with you, and I'm so glad that there are universities like Colorado Christian University out there. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Cheryl, thank you. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
So if you're a parent looking for alternatives to places of higher education in America that allow anti-Semitic protests to go forth on their college campuses, well, check out Colorado Christian University or any of the other Christian universities out there in America that still do care about giving an education to your child, a real education, and not so much filling their minds with propaganda and Marxist messaging. Thank you for listening. I want to remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.